Let's take a look at how to do some isometrics in Fusion. So what we're doing is we're going to create this isometric drawing. We're going to create a part file of that in Fusion. To do that, we're going to need to use our other drawings. So our front view here and a top view. We also are going to need to know our scale. Typically there's also a right side view, but this is what we were given this time, so we'll just use it and we'll make it work. The big thing I always start with is getting the total volume of the shape, and then I'll go back through here and I'll cut this circle out and I'll cut this circle. But for right now I'm going to just get the volume. So I'm trying to figure out the length here and the depth and the height of this thing. So I'm going to go to the front view because that's going to give me the length and the height. So the length of this is, there's 2 squares, and remember every 2 squares equals 1 inch. So 2, 4, so there's 2 inches, 3 inches, so 3.5 inches on the length. On our height we're going to go 1 inch, 2 inches, and then 2.5. While I'm here I'm going to go ahead and get the thickness, so the depth. And that looks like 2 blocks, so that translates out to 1 inch when I use the scale factor here. Alright, so 3.5 by 2.5 by 1 inch thick. So let's go to Fusion now and draw that up. So I'm going to click New Sketch right up here, and I'm going to click the plane. I usually start with the front plane here, and I'll pick Rectangle up here, and I'll go down to the origin. Now I've drawn a square. Now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Dimension up here. I can either click this in or I can press the D key on my keyboard. Either way I'll get the same thing. I'm going to click here, and you know what? This is supposed to be 3.5 according to the math we did on scales. And then the height here should be 2.5. And then we can go extrude it. Now there's a couple ways to get to extrude. You can press the E key on your keyboard and that'll get you there. That's a shortcut. Or the long way, and probably the way we need to go with for now until we get used to things, we'll click Finish Sketch, and then we'll come over here and hit Extrude. And I'm going to just kind of pull this arrow in the direction I want it to go. And I remember from my scale that that is supposed to be 1 inch. So there's my overall volume. Everything's going to fit in there. Now I know that I have a hole here and a hole up here. So let's go back and look more on those. So taking a look at the front view, it looks like I've got from the center out, it looks like 1.5 blocks, and then we have 1.5 blocks over here. So really we have 3 blocks. Well, remember 2 blocks equals 1 inch. So I'm going to go out here and I'm going to say that the diameter of this should probably be 1.5 according to our scale. Now also while I'm here, I'm going to say from the bottom to the center, that is 2 squares. So that looks like 1 inch from here to the center. And then I'll just take this edge and say from here to the center, looks like 1, 2, 3. So that would be 1.5. So we're 1 inch, and over we're 1.5. And it looks like the diameter here is 1.5. So I'm going to go back to Fusion now, and I'm going to say Sketch. And I know that that goes right here. So now I'm going to draw the circle, and I know it's in here somewhere. Then I'll go back to Dimension and I'll say, you know what, this was supposed to be about 1.5. And then I'm going to click the center point here and here, and I believe we said 1 on that. We also know from the center to this edge, looks like it was 1.5 as well. So from here I'm going to go to Extrude again. So I can press the E key, or I can go to Finish Sketch and click Extrude. And I'm going to click that circle, but I know this time I'm going to do a cut. So I'm just going to make it go that way. And honestly, this is supposed to go all the way through. So I can say for this, notice how the operation changed to cut just by the way I drug the arrow. And I know that I could say distance and then 1 inch, or I could just go right here to distance and say all. And that's going to cut it all the way through there. So it kind of looks something like that. Now I also remember there's a hole up here too. So I could go ahead and start the sketch if I wanted. So I click new sketch, and I know that that's got to be over here. And I know that somewhere in this area there's a hole. Now I'm going to go back and look at that drawing, and I'm going to say, you know what, that looks like one circle, or excuse me, one square for the diameter there. So that's going to be 0.5 for a diameter, and it looks like it's 1.5 squares over to the center, and it looks like it's one square up to the center. So 0.5 and probably like a 0.75 from this edge to the center. So 0.75 there, and it looks like from the bottom to the center is going to be 0.5, and the diameter looks to be one square, so that's going to be 0.5. So I'm going to go back to Fusion and do some numbers. So click on dimension. From the edge to the center, we wanted that to be about 0.75. We knew from the center to one of these edges should be 0.5. It looks like that went well already, but I'll go ahead and make sure. And it looks like the diameter of this circle was supposed to be 0.5 as well. So I'll go ahead and I can either press the E key for extrude, or I can go finish sketch and extrude, and I'll click the circle. I'm just going to drag the arrow the direction I want it to go, and then I'll come over here to extent. Where it says distance, I'm going to say all. And because I drug that arrow into the object, it automatically changed the operation to cut. So I'll just leave it there and say OK. So now when I go down here to orbit, I can see how it's going to orbit. I can also look up here at the view cube and say here's the front view. I can flip, and here's the right side view, and then here's the top view. If I want an ISO view of it, I can hit the house button here, and it'll rotate it to a perfect isometric. Before I move on, I would probably go ahead and save that file and make sure you put it in the right folder. From here we would look at the previous video on how to insert a part into a dimension drawing or into a detailed drawing.